Have you ever used a website that just felt incredibly fast, where things changed on the screen instantly without any lag? Well, there's a good chance you've experienced the power of React. And today, we're going to pull back the curtain and demystify its core concepts. So, yeah, how do they do it? How do modern apps feel so fluid and interactive, almost like a native desktop application? It's not magic, but it is some seriously clever engineering. And a huge part of that answer is a technology called React. All right, let's dive right in. To really get React, we have to start with its most fundamental idea. I like to call it the philosophy of building blocks. So what is React officially? It's a JavaScript library for one thing, and one thing only, building user interfaces. But the key, the absolute heart of it, is how it does that. By breaking the UI down into these small, self-contained, and reusable pieces. We call these pieces components. Honestly, the best way to picture this is with Legos. Imagine you're building a website. Instead of making the whole thing one giant, messy sculpture, React encourages you to create individual bricks. You might have a search bar brick, a user profile brick, a button brick. You build each one perfectly, once, and then you can reuse it anywhere you want. It's genius, really. Super organized and incredibly efficient. Okay, so we have our Lego bricks, our components, but how do they get information? How does a button know what text to display, or a profile know whose picture to show? That's where two of the most important concepts in React come into play, state and props. Let's break this down, because it's crucial. State is a component's internal memory. It's data that the component itself owns and can change. Think about a search field. The text you're actively typing inside it, that's its state. Now, props are different. Props are information that gets passed into a component from its parent. They're like instructions. If a parent component tells a button, hey, your color is blue, that's a prop. The button can't change it, it just does what it's told. So what happens when two separate components need to share the same information? Well, you can't just have them talk to each other directly. Instead, use this really common pattern called lifting state up. You find the closest parent component they both share, you give that parent the memory, the state, and then the parent passes the information down to both children as props. It's a clean way to keep everyone in sync. Now for the really, really cool part. How does React actually pull off that incredible speed we talked about? Let's take a look inside the engine room and see how it works its magic. Here is React's secret weapon. Manipulating the actual web page, what developers call the DOM, is incredibly slow. It's like rewriting an entire book just to fix a typo. So React does something brilliant. When data changes, it doesn't touch the real page. Instead, it builds a lightweight copy of it in memory, a virtual DOM. Then it compares the new virtual copy with the old one, figures out the absolute smallest possible difference, and then, and only then, it makes that tiny, surgical update to the real page. And the result of all this, you completely avoid those slow, clunky, full-page reloads that used to be so common. By only changing the tiny bits that need changing, everything feels instantaneous. That is why React apps feel so fast. And this whole system gets even smarter when you're dealing with lists. To help React be as efficient as possible, we give each item in a list a unique key. It's basically like a name tag. This lets React know instantly if an item was added or moved or just moved around, so it can make the updates with pinpoint accuracy instead of guessing. Now, React has evolved over the years, and the modern way of writing it gives our simple components some serious superpowers. This evolution is all thanks to a feature called hooks. So, what in the world are hooks? They're just special functions that let you hook into React's core features, like state, from your simple, clean components. See, back in the day, you had to use more complicated structures called classes for stateful logic. Hooks let us do all the same powerful stuff with much less code. They're a total game changer, and they're absolutely the standard today. The first hook everyone learns, and the one you'll use constantly, is useState. It does exactly what it sounds like. It lets you add that internal, changeable memory, that state we talked about, to your components. It's simple, powerful, and absolutely fundamental. The other powerhouse hook you need to know is useEffect. This one is for handling side effects. That's just a fancy term for any task that a component needs to do that isn't directly related to drawing things on the screen. So think fetching data from a server, setting up a timer, interacting with an outside API. All of that stuff goes inside a useEffect. Okay, so we have components, we have state and props, and we have hooks. That's the core of React. But React is just the library for the UI.
To build a full-blown application, you'll need to tap into its incredible ecosystem of tools.
So for example, React doesn't handle page navigation out of the box. For that, you'll grab a library like React Router. If your application's data gets super complex and needs to be accessed by many different components, you'll look at a state management tool like Redux or React's own Context API. The ecosystem is huge, and it's all about picking the right tool for your specific problem. A classic problem that these state management tools solve is something called prop drilling. This is when you have to pass a piece of DataGAM through like 5 or 6 layers of components just to get it to the one at the bottom that actually needs it. It's messy and annoying. Tools like Context or Redux create a sort of global data store so any component can just reach out and grab the data it needs directly. No more drilling. So if you're going to walk away with one single takeaway, let it be this. At its heart, React is all about a simple, powerful idea. Break your interface into small, reusable components, and then manage how they efficiently update when the underlying data changes. That's the whole philosophy right there. And this leaves us with a big question that every developer faces. React gives us this amazing spectrum of tools, from a simple use state hook all the way to complex app-wide state management. The real skill isn't just knowing the tools exist, it's developing the wisdom to know which one is right for the job. When is simple good enough, and when do you need to reach for something more powerful? That right there is the art of building great applications.